You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Helen Mackenzie, and today is Friday, March 25th, 2022.
6.
Welcome to this week's Procurement 6. This week's Procurement 6 is proudly sponsored by Zip Intake to Procure. Zip is the world's leading intake to procure solution. One place for employees to initiate a purchase or vendor request. We're delighted to be partnering with Zip on a research paper on the all-important topic of employee experience during the intake to procure process. The stakeholder experience during the process often defines their perception of the role of procurement, either as a bureaucratic gatekeeper or an enabler of business strategy. So, tell us what you think. Does employee experience really matter to procurement? Head on over to artofprocurement.com/experience survey to give us your thoughts before the survey closes.
5.
One of the ideas we think about a lot at Art of Procurement is the notion that procurement should be thinking more like an external service provider. It's a great way to improve the service we're providing, but more importantly, the value we're delivering and the outcomes we're helping the business to achieve. So, it was great to hear from 3 people that are leading the way in this week's podcast. Aquinima's Vanessa Pepperell, Bullen's Beatrice Felder and BT Source Cyril Porat. There's so much wisdom in this episode that I found it difficult to choose an extract for you. But I've settled for this exchange between Art of Procurement's Philip Eidson and Vanessa Pepperell about what procurement can achieve.
Yeah, from my personal perspective, what I love about the model is you can also turn procurement into a revenue generating function. So it's not just, historically we've been providing a service and perhaps being seen on the cost side of the ledger. Now you can move it to the revenue side of the ledger, which opens up an entirely different discussion from a strategic perspective, as well in the investment that you can then get from your business, because there is the potential of some return from a revenue perspective, not just the ROI you drive through, the other value that we provide as procurement practitioners.
That's it. And that's what I call advanced procurement. I mean, the closer you're to the business, the sooner you get to the business, investment and development. When you are defining the new product, procurement should be there. I mean, bring in innovative, bring in knowledge, technical aspects, and also the understanding the economics behind this new line of business. And therefore, you can impact in both revenues and cost. Both of them.
Now that's what I call an impact. Check out the full podcast at artofprocurement.com/podcast.
4.
It's such a volatile time at the moment, wherever you are in the world. So what can we do to carry on delivering our targets and provide value to the business? Well, one of my go-to tactics is to return to the basics and think about the fundamentals of procurement. I like to start with the most important procurement question of them all. Do we really need this? At AOP, we call this bottom-up review of critical and non-critical spend. By carrying out a bottom-up review of external spend in your category or across the board, you can label each supplier and each product or service as mission critical, nice to have, or a luxury. Are there spend items that we can just stop using? What are the areas that are fundamental to our competitive advantage that the risk-reward payoff isn't worth the time and effort it would take to do a review? Now, a word of warning here. Many of our stakeholders will initially label most of their spend as mission critical, so you need to be empathetic and not directly challenging their need. Try getting a group together to discuss a number of spend areas rather than one-to-one with the stakeholder. A collective approach is often the most effective and a great way of demonstrating the value that having someone from procurement in the conversation can deliver. For more tips like this, head on over to artofprocurement.com and download our free expense management cheat sheet today.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
March 21st marked the first ever World Sustainable Procurement Day, and it was organised by the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. But making a pledge and sticking to it are two different things. How can we keep focused on the outcome? I love this quote from British entrepreneur and award-winning sustainability leader Cressy Westing, CBE. Running any business is difficult. Getting customers, traction, all of these things are difficult. But doing it for social and environmental purposes makes your decision-making process slightly different. One decision lens that we apply, does this make financial sense? Which is standard for any business. But on top of that, and probably much more fundamental to our business, we always ask, does this make the world a better place for other people's grandchildren? If the answer to that is yes, then we can do it. Thanks for the inspiration, Cressy.
2.
Sticking with the theme of sustainability, Supply Management shared the approach that JP Morgan are using to evaluate every supplier's carbon emissions. Nick Hammerlack, head of supplier sustainability at JP Morgan Chase, said his team of 4 were in a mobilise and measure phase, and that would lead to a manage phase further down the line. Hammerlack said his team were using a combination of publicly available information and assessments to record the carbon emissions of suppliers. Once this is completed, they'll move on to the manage phase, which will involve partnering with suppliers and working with them to set goals and targets. When you look at the things we buy and the improvements we're making on a product-by-product basis, that's the most exciting thing, he said. Sitting down with suppliers and saying, how can we actually change the way we're doing things? That's the exciting thing. Absolutely, Nick.
1.
Now, we've got 2 AOP Live webinars coming soon. On Tuesday, March 29th, we have an AOP Live covering the opportunities for procurement to leverage the rising contingent workforce. Most companies think of their contingent workforce spend as a cost-based category, laced with high levels of risk. Whilst lowering cost and risk is important, it doesn't even begin to touch the full range of strategic benefits available to companies that take a broader approach to managing their contingent workforce spend. Cost and risk management are table stakes, and procurement needs to think bigger, taking the category to the next level to value beyond savings. And when procurement manages contingent workforce spend with the right policies and technology, they can unlock competitive advantage in the forms of better talent, fast turnaround and increased efficiency. And I love contingent labour, don't you? It's a fascinating category. So sign up now for AOP Live on March 28th. For our second event, we'll be joined by long-term AOP friends Joe Payne and Jennifer Ulrich from Corcentric, and that session's on March 12th. And it's called The 3 Problems That Will Make Your P2P Implementation Fail. Now, I'm sure, like me, you'd love to know what those 3 problems are. But for that, you're going to have to visit the registration link on today's episode page or go to artofprocurement.com and check out our upcoming digital events. But what I can tell you is that Joe and Jennifer have seen more procurement transformations than they'd probably like to admit, and all of the roadblocks that stem from these 3 problems. The solution is a heavy dose of change management, and that's always a bit of a challenge for procurement. So just go to artofprocurement.com/calendar to find out more. And you can find all the links associated with the stories mentioned today at the show notes page for this episode at artofprocurement.com/podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.